Hey everyone, my name is Alex Brinkley. I'm a composer, and in this video, I want to talk about how to insert empty lanes inside of Logic's articulation sets. So if you haven't used a articulation set before, they are a way of sending either a MIDI CC or a note message that can be assigned to a note in your piano roll. So for example, here's one that I have built out for chamber strings, and we can see we have the names of the articulations, and then under the output panel, we can see that they're sending note on messages starting with C-1. So on this first one, for example, just as a demonstration, let's write a quarter note on beat 1, and then let's put a staccato note on beat 2. So the first one is already set to long, the second one, we'll grab it, and then we'll click on staccato. And now we have the patch actually changing articulation. So this is a really useful tool if you haven't used this before. It can really add a sense of realism to your mockups. They can get pretty complicated as well. Let me give you an example of a really big articulation set inside of Berlin strings. So here's one that has over 100 different kinds of articulations with the different expansion libraries. You know, there's different kinds of clusters and aleatoric effects, some phrases, some scales, along with your normal longs and shorts and whatnot. When you're building something of this size, it can be pretty confusing, and sometimes you need to kind of like go back and change things. Like, let's say, for example, maybe you want to insert a blank space below accent to fill it with another articulation. And one of the things about articulation sets is that the user interface is pretty poorly designed. And that's because you can't actually insert empty lanes. So if I were to press the plus button, it simply inserts them here at the bottom. With that, I can't then, drag this up or anything like that. If I really wanted to insert one below the accented articulation, what I would have to do is delete all of my work and then insert one and then keep building. I could, in theory, change the name and then change the articulation or the note message from one and then keep on building it out from there. But that can be sometimes more of a hassle, honestly, because either way, you have to redo a lot of your work. That being said, these things are actually just XML documents. And if you don't know what a XML document is, it's a file that contains data about other files. They're pretty lightweight and they're pretty easy to navigate as well. And so we can actually get the fundamental code of this file to then change it to insert some empty slots. So to do that, we need to find this articulation set, which is under our user, under music, audio music apps, articulation settings, orchestral tools in my case, and then Berlin strings. Now, by default, when you try to open this, it won't give you any kind of option to open it with, but I've set my default to open with text edit, and this is what it looks like. Here's the fundamental code of that. So let's say I want to insert the one below the accented articulation. So I'll just do a quick search for accent. There's a couple different ones in this library that use that word, but I know that the first one is the one that I'm looking for here. So let's talk a little bit about what this data actually means. So we can see articulation ID 203. That number is a specific number that can be changed inside of Logic. Below that is the ID number. This is something that we cannot change, and this is predetermined by Logic. And this number is also very important because we want to make sure that this number is unique from all other articulations found in this file. So that will come into play once we start to actually insert our empty lane. Below that, we see name, which here is saying accent, and then output. And so what is it actually outputting? It's outputting MIDI note 113 on MIDI channel, what appears to be 5. However, if we were to open up it in Logic, we can see that it's actually outputting on channel 6. And that's because the XML document actually starts counting from 0. So 0 is MIDI channel 1, and then 1 is MIDI channel 2, and so forth like that. Below that, we see what type of message it is. It's a note on message. And then it kind of wraps it up with just a little bit of final code, and there you go. All of this stuff is what is contained inside of a articulation set. So to insert a blank one, we need to find a blank one inside of our original template, such as the one right below arpeggiated. So let me do a search for arpeggiated. And there is my arpeggiated articulation, and so therefore the one right beneath it is the one I'm looking for. We'll copy it, and let's do a search now for accented, or accent. And there it is. And so we'll hit enter, and then we'll paste in our empty articulation. Now there's one final step. We need to change the articulation ID number. So in this case, it was 3003 before. So let's make this one something that is unique. I know that we already used up to 3005, so this number will be 3006. Let's do a quick search inside of this text document for the item 3006. There's only one, which is great. So then we'll save this, we'll quit it, and let's close the articulation set here in Logic. And now we need to refresh it so that the empty lane will be inserted. So we'll say none under articulation set, and then we'll go to orchestral tools, Berlin strings, violin 1. And then if we scroll down, we should see our empty lane right below the accented articulation. From there, what we need to do is write in our articulation set. So let's say I want this to be instead, this will be my, let's say, blurred articulation. Great. We'll give it a unique number, such as 206, and then it'll output a note on message on MIDI channel 6, and it'll trigger whatever note you need it to trigger. So that is a bit under the hood of Logic's articulation sets. I hope you found this video useful. This was a really big help for me and really saved me a lot of time when I was doing some template builds. So if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me via contact@alexbrinkley.com. Thanks.